Hi, everyone. Welcome to the That's Allowed podcast. I'm your hostess, Audrey Ann McKeon, and today we have Michelle Anhang. Please, Michelle, introduce your wonderful self.
Hi. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I was just saying how excited I am to be here. I'm Michelle Anhang. I am in Toronto, Canada, and I am a certified professional coach. And I specialize in working with individuals and families with living with mental health challenges, as well as those moving forward after loss.
Wonderful.
Should I just keep going or?
So I imagine you know a lot about grief.
I do. Yes.
Yeah. So let's dive into that a little bit deeper.
Okay.
I know.
I had a feeling we were going to dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know that, you are pretty comfortable with telling your grief story, but I want to, if I can, just go a little bit deeper than you usually talk about. Let's start with where did that start for you? What was the loss that started this?
Yeah, so the loss was losing my husband 14 years ago. I was 34, and he died by suicide after losing his battle to severe mental illness. He had bipolar disorder and a form of schizophrenia that was only diagnosed a couple of years before his death. And through the process of trying to figure out the medications which weren't working and everything else, he essentially lost hope.
Well, it sounds like just one moment. It sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, like you started to lose him before that. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
For the last couple of years of his life, he was not the man that I married, that I knew. We met each other when we were 8. We grew up in the same community.
Goodness.
Yeah. And we started dating at 18. So high school sweethearts, and know each other inside and out. And but the last couple of years.
It's like this new person. So can you find an example, like an anecdote or something that might illustrate what that difference was, where that change was?
Yeah, so I can think of particularly one period of time. This was in the very beginning after the diagnosis, and they were trying to find the right medications for him. And I say medications because those of us who are familiar with severe mental illness know it's not just one drug that you take and it makes you better. It's usually a cocktail, and they have to figure out the right medications and the right dosages. And so, before he got really sick, like I think the illness was there for a long time. He just did a really good job at hiding it. But the man that I knew and fell in love with and was totally in love with was the kindest, gentlest soul. He was the guy that was always smiling. He was super charming, but in a very sweet and sensitive way. He was the guy that like all the women were friends with because like he was so in touch with his sensitive side, and just really a loving man. And one of the first medications that they tried was Prozac, which generally people find kind of numbs them out. With him, it had the opposite effect, and it actually made him very aggressive and like almost like violent, thankfully not to me or my kids, but he was punching holes in walls, and like he would even punch brick walls, and the pain wasn't, but it was just like, who are you? Like we were scared. My kids were pretty little, but he just, he had a lot of paranoia, and then the anger, and he was convinced that, we were out to get him or somebody was out to get him. And, I remember one specific incident with my older son, who I think must have been about, he was about 5 when at this time. And he was in the kitchen. We were all sitting down having dinner, and my son was by the fridge, and my husband said, "Oh, can you pass me?" Like, I don't know. He was like, "Can you get me the mustard from the fridge?" And, my son's looking, and he's like, I don't see it. I don't think we have any. And like, this is like a little kid. And my husband just like turned around and freaked out. And he's just like, are you trying to mess with me? Of course. And I was like, whoa. So like,
Oh,
yeah, a complete, and it's like, okay, first of all, he's 5 and like, maybe he doesn't
yeah.
see it. And second of all, like, it's just mustard. So yeah, those
Yeah.
kinds of things were going on. Thankfully, we got him off those meds really quickly. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
just a progression of a lot of those kinds of isolated incidents that were very unnerving.
It's very scary to see what a thin thread kind of connects us to the person that we think of ourselves as, right?
Oh, yeah.
And how easily our personality can shift and change, especially when our brain chemistry is off, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, so let's take it a little bit forward now. So your husband has
Sure.
died, and
Yes.
then what happened for you?
So I had to go tell his parents.
Oof.
And yeah, you know, I think, well, that and having to tell my kids were extremely painful.
Oh, yeah.
Um, but, and I was still in shock. So I didn't feel it right away, but essentially, as the family was starting to gather, because we were calling the immediate family and, a few close friends, and they were all coming over. And one of the family members turned to me at one point and was like, what are we going to tell people? And, you know, at first it was like, huh? And then it was like, oh yeah, like, what are we going to tell people? And, and I say, like, I take full responsibility too. Like, I, there were so many layers of shame. I mean, I
Yeah.
came from a shame driven home and then married into a family that, I was like, because that's just what we marry, what we know.
Yeah.
And, and there was, my husband had his shame about his illness and we were keeping that a secret. And then it was like,
Yeah.
yeah, now how do we explain a suicide? And how do I tell my kids, because they're 7 and 4 and I don't understand how we did this. So how are they going to understand?
Yeah.
And all the feelings of like, and the thoughts around, did I somehow do something wrong? Did I miss something? Did I not see something? How might this be my fault? I don't know, and I can't deal with this. So yes, let's say it was an accident, to give me time to process all of this, because there was so much, and I'm imagining that this family member felt their own guilt and fear and wonder and shame too, of just
Of
like,
course.
could we have prevented it, and what did we miss? And so we told everybody, my kids, the world, that he died in an accident.
That is a big burden to carry.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did that change? When did that shift and you started to tell the truth?
um, Almost 11 years later.
Yeah.
It was a long time to carry that.
Yeah.
And yeah, it had a huge impact on me. That secret was not like, it's not something that you just kind of put out of your mind and remember once in a while. It became a part of my daily life.
Yeah.
um, you know the isolating myself, not letting myself get close to people because I didn't want to have to go into what happened, being afraid of people. It's like, oh, the first question would always be like, when they know I was single, it's like, oh, so how long have you been divorced? And it's like, I'm not divorced, I'm widowed. And then in my head, I'd be like, oh, please don't ask me how. And then,
Right.
'cause I don't want to
Right.
lie again. Like,
Yeah.
I try to think of myself as a good person, but I'm carrying this huge lie, and I'm lying to every new person I'm meeting. And I'm lying to like my closest friends, like only a handful of people of like my close friends knew. And like I had friends from high school that did not know the truth. And so I felt like a fraud. And
Yeah.
so, just really isolating myself, shutting down, and then the shame of that too, to compound everything else.
Right.
And then the anxiety that I had as well of just always worrying that somebody's going to find out, someone's going to tell my kids, it's going to slip out somehow. I will be
Right.
called out for the fraud that I am. My kids are going to hate me. Everyone will
Mm.
hate me. Yeah. So a lot of that, a lot of self-loathing that goes with that too. So
Yeah, and I
quite a
imagine,
burden.
yeah, and I imagine too, you tell a lie, and of course you have to tell little lies to cover up the first lie. And
Yeah.
because you're lying about something, you feel this immediate guilt response, like you're covering up something naughty, like you're
Yes.
covering up
Oh yeah.
something bad that you did. And so
Yeah.
that compounds and hooks into that original feeling that you described of,
Yeah.
what did I do wrong here?
Right.
How did I miss something? How did I not save him?
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
It's almost, it's creating the shame where,
Yes. It's a
if
complete
there wasn't
cycle.
enough. Yeah.
Yes.
It's completely, and it was
Absolutely.
vicious. It was a vicious one.
Yes, yes. And so when you started to tell the truth, how much of your fears actually
Mm.
came true?
Oh, none of them.
None of them, right?
None. Yeah.
Not a single one.
Not a single one. Yeah. It's so amazing.
Your kids don't hate you now. Your
No,
friends don't hate you.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. Like I say, like, in the work that I do, I always say, like, fear is a liar, and it really
Yeah.
was. And it totally, I mean, it kept me from telling the truth for that long, but proving fear wrong was very liberating, and made me very happy.
Someone said, and I can't remember who this is, but they said anxiety is basically just me coming up with conspiracy theories about myself.
Oh, I love that. It's so true.
So true.
That's great.
Yeah, you just go to the most extreme, like,
Oh yeah.
this might be. It's like, no, come on now.
Yeah.
You have no evidence
Yeah.
for that.
Right.
That's beautiful. So there's this turning point of when you started to tell the truth. And how did things start to change from there? How did that bring
Mm,
you to where you are now?
yeah. So it took a lot of personal development work for me and healing for me to actually be able to say it out loud. Like, I'm not going to say that I woke up one day and I was like, you know what, I'm done with this. Like,
Yes.
I wasn't. I was, in a very dark place. And a place, I say it was like one of my rock bottoms, because there were a few. And
I was just talking to someone else about that today. It's like, yeah, you think you've hit rock bottom, but then you're like, oh, there was more to go. Okay.
right, it's like
And
it's a
how,
nasty
often,
cliff.
exactly, like it's like you have this realization. And so you think, oh, okay, like things are gonna change now. But you may not have been all the way to the darkest part of that tunnel yet. And even though, the light's there and you're gonna get there, you still have to go through. There's
Yes,
no way out but through. And so
exactly.
sometimes, and often, even though we have that realization, sometimes the universe has to push us a little bit harder to take the action that needs to be taken to actually change things.
Oh,
It has to make you a little
100%.
more uncomfortable before you're willing to make
Oh
those big,
yeah, yeah.
scary
And
changes. Yeah.
I describe my moment of just realizing, like, I am in so much pain. It was around my 45th birthday, and I was like, I can't live the next half of my life in this much pain. Like,
Mm.
I had enough. And I think that there's an Elizabeth Gilbert saying, and I've used it before, and I really should memorize it because I mess it up every single time. But it's like, I've never seen anyone undergo a huge transformation without before that getting tired of their own bullshit.
Yeah.
And that's essentially it. So, like, I was just like, enough, I get it, it's me. And like, I am perpetuating this, and I am also the one who can make things better. And so, yeah, hitting a very dark place in my life that I just said, I need to heal all of this, like right back to like the childhood shame and the stories about myself and who I am. Up to that point in time of, this 45-year-old woman who's, in a pretty crappy place in her life. And so, yeah, I did the dark dark shadow work, did a lot of trauma work to work through my PTSD around that.
Yeah.
And then the first step was telling my kids, because that's who I cared the most about knowing. Like, the truth is, after once they knew, no one else mattered, but it was my relationship with them that I cared the most about.
Yeah.
They were 18 and 15 at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I told them over dinner. I mean, it was very well planned. It was also not a sudden thing. It was,
Yeah.
I had my support people around, and
Good.
I had started talking to a few people that I felt safe with, saying, this is what happened, and I think I'm ready to tell my kids.
Yeah.
And so I had a pretty, I'm going to say, large support group from that point, that were right there for me, knowing how big this was. Like, we were actually being coaches. We were using Zoom before the pandemic hit, but so we actually had like a Zoom call the day before where everyone pumped me up and I was ready to go. And then another call after. So I was very well supported through this.
Awesome.
And yeah. And so I told my kids, with the fear that they may be angry and not want to talk to me, if maybe it never again, but very possibly not just till they processed everything.
Yeah.
And actually that wasn't the case. I told them, I was very matter of fact. I said, this is what happened. I wish I had done it differently, but I didn't. And I'm sorry, but here it is now. And I, want you to know the truth moving forward.
Yeah.
And they both took it really well. Like they just said, both of them said that they wish they had known sooner.
Sure.
But they understood, because they knew the family, like, both sides of the family, and what, the shame that was there. And so they were very accepting. There was no yelling. It was actually really nice. Like, we were actually like, and this two teenage boys, and, I'm holding both of their hands through this conversation. It was really, such a defining moment in our relationship.
Yeah.
And, they obviously had many questions. And I know many people ask me, like, did they know, did they have a sense of it?
Mm-hmm.
Neither of them thought that it was suicide. My older son said that he always had a feeling that might not be the story, but he never thought it was suicide. He thought maybe there's something else. And my younger one said he realized something was up because he knew he didn't know a single detail about it, because I never talked about it. And if anybody would say, like, oh, what happened in the accident, I wasn't going to start making stuff up. So I was just like, I don't want to go into the details.
Right. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's too painful.
Which is true.
It's true, but yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then from that point, I realized not too long after that, I have this life experience, I have this story, and I can help people that are going through it now to hopefully not do it the way that I did. Or if they did, to know, like, you can get out of that and find freedom on the other side.
But let's talk for a minute about the things that you did right. Because you actually, I think there's a lot in here that you're not necessarily recognizing that you really did well, actually. I do think there was an element of wanting to protect your kids, which is a really noble thing, absolutely. And I do think that once you decided, this enough is enough, I'm going to be brave and I'm going to be vulnerable, you did exactly the right thing, which is you gathered support around yourself, which can be a really hard thing to do. To say, I need help, I need support in this thing that I did.
Yes.
Nobody did this to me. I'm not a victim here.
I created
this situation, and I need your help to get myself out of it.
Yeah.
And then you were able to accept that help.
Yeah.
And you were able to really open up and be vulnerable enough to show your kids that you were sincere. This was authentic. You were able to listen to them and hear about their experience of it and answer their
Yeah.
questions and really connect with them. I think that's
Yes.
really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, definitely.
absolutely. So, who do you think needs to hear this story?
Mm. You know, it's interesting because the more I talk about my story, the more people that I didn't think it would impact, it does
Hmm.
impact.
Yeah.
Um, you know, of course, the people who are living in any part of that situation that I was in, that I want them to hear it and to know that you can't, it's not the end. Um, it's not always going to be dark, that there is freedom and joy to be found on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Um, I know I've impacted people. Somebody shared with me once after I did it was a talk. It was an in-person talk on stage. They shared with me that they had had suicidal thoughts for a good part of their life and never thought about the way it would impact their family. And in that particular talk, I went through a lot of the details of like, because my husband called me right before he passed away,
Oh,
and
wow.
just to say goodbye and say he loved me, and he thought this was the right thing to do. But so and so I spoke about that, and I spoke about the thoughts that were going on in my head and how much I blamed myself. And this person said that it changed them after hearing that, because they never thought about the details of like how it would impact their families. So anybody who is having suicidal thoughts in a dark place, to know that. And again, like, I was in my own dark places over those times, and there is a possibility for happiness. And really anybody else who doesn't know a lot about mental illness, who doesn't have an understanding about suicide. One thing that I realized, like, with Robin Williams and many of the other, people in the public, sphere who have passed away, like, nobody heard all the details of what life was like with them before. And then it kind of is like the story ends with their suicide, and we don't hear about the impact on the family afterwards. So we just think of it as this one moment in time. It's a blip, and then it's over. But the grieving never ends. So I talk about it because I think people need to know this. And I want to end the stigma, like, enough of the stigma around mental health. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a dirty word, and suicide. And it's like we all have varying levels of mental health. And particularly now during the pandemic, people that
Yes.
did not have a diagnosis, that otherwise might have considered themselves very mentally healthy, are being challenged. Like, we
Yeah.
all are. And so really now is the time where we just have to say, like, okay, this is just like having a common cold or the stomach flu or anything else, or anything bigger, but let's talk about it. Let's educate people. Like, let's not make it a secret, because people need to understand the suffering that the people around them are experiencing.
Yeah.
And there's so much that we can do for people. Like, obviously everyone's on their own journey, but even just offering that little extra support, the check-ins, all those things, there are things we can do. So that's why I make it my mission to talk about it, because I think everybody can learn something, from every single person's story.
Absolutely. And I think it's a real shame that we don't teach the tools for resilience and for mental
Yeah,
wellness and self care in
yeah,
schools.
yeah,
I think these are things that, emotional intelligence and recognizing, we are responsible for our own emotional life. And here are some tools to help you manage it
yeah,
would be
yeah.
huge.
So huge. I know. And I see our culture just medicates kids. Like, when
Yeah.
you're talking about schools, it's like, I mean, now both of my kids are in university, but, in high school, it's like most of their friends were on something for either depression,
Mhm.
anxiety, ADHD, or bipolar disorder. It is like those were the top four.
Yeah.
But it just, the statistics I don't think are accurate. I think they say like 40%. I'm like, no way.
No way.
No way. It's way higher. And then those are the kids who are actually getting treatment for it. Then there's all the people that are not, not diagnosed, not getting any kind of treatment, not talking about it. So it's quite prevalent. And I think you're so on point about the tools that we all need to learn to help take care of ourselves. And that's part of the work that I do, is empowering people with their mental health challenges, of saying like, okay, you may have this and you may be on medication. And I'm not anti-medication. I think there are times where it serves. For my own mental health challenges, I was on medication at one point because I couldn't function.
Mm-hmm.
And then I, was able to go off of it because I did create a very, I had to change my lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that was, I was very committed to doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that I was in control of it. It's not that it controlled me and this medication isn't working, because the meds don't do everything. So much of it is mindset. So much of it is
Yeah.
lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
Just the one thing alone of like, are you getting enough sleep? That can make, if we're
Right.
not, we're going to get anxious and frustrated and irritable, or we're going to be depressed and exhausted and lethargic. And so, just that one thing alone, but there's so many other little things that we can do to empower ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've had so many beautiful messages and lessons have come up in the course of our conversation so far. But I always like to give people a chance to kind of tie it up into a nice little bow and say, what
Mm-hmm.
is the core message or takeaway that I want everyone to walk away from this with?
The core message is just make the decision and do it, because there is so much
Mm,
freedom on the other side of it. That's really, for me, is the number one word of,
freedom.
freedom.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. So now we're going to shift into the
Mm-hmm.
future. Okay.
Cool.
So I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Okay. Take a nice deep breath. And as you exhale, you realize that all of your wishes, everything you have ever wanted, has just come true. Your life is exactly as you always imagined it could be and should be. So I want you to just look around this life that you've created for yourself, this perfect, ideal, so you life. You've become exactly yourself. There's nothing standing in your way, nothing blocking you from being exactly you. And I want you to describe for me this amazing life that you now have.
Mm. So the first thing that came up um, was being on stage and, having, thousands of people that I can talk and
Mm-hmm.
have an impact on, and really just share the good stuff.
Yeah, so let's go a little deeper. What
Yeah.
do you feel? You feel the lights on
Mm.
you. You hear
Mm-hmm.
the crowd talking a little
Yeah.
bit, right? But
Yeah.
then there's also that hush, that silence when you're about
Yeah.
to speak.
Yeah.
All
Um,
eyes on you.
yeah. There's excitement. There's inspiration. Um, again, joy. Um, the word is just impact, of just, making a difference.
Yeah, I want you to see someone out in the audience who you really know that you have just made an impact on. You can see it in their face.
Mm.
You feel what that feels like.
I'm feeling emotional.
Now, if there's a soundtrack here, like as you're coming on stage, there's music playing. What's the soundtrack? Is it a specific
So,
song or maybe a
oh,
just
yeah.
genre?
No, it's a song. I know it already because I play it and it's going to make me cry. Um, so there's the song from, what was that movie with the circus? The Greatest.
Greatest Showman.
Yes, This Is Me.
This is
That
me.
song.
Oh, I love
Yes,
that song.
yes,
That's wonderful.
yes. So I'm getting teary, and Yes.
Beautiful. I love
Yeah.
that.
So
Okay.
it's that ownership of this is me, real and raw and beautiful, and I'm showing up as me, and with all the gifts that I was given to share with the world.
All right. So what happened just before this? So
Mm,
before you came on stage, uh, before you got into this venue, where were you? What was going on?
mm. I was at my beach house.
Beautiful. Okay.
Yes.
I want you to go there for a moment.
Hmm.
Okay. You're in your beach house. You're preparing for this amazing experience that you're about to have, putting together your thoughts. Where are you physically?
I am in my office,
Okay.
which is a beautiful, fully windowed room
Mm,
overlooking the water. I have this picture on my vision board too, so
love it.
it's quite clear. Um, and I can picture there's my living space behind me, so it's very open concept,
Hmm.
very bright. Um, my kids are there, and yeah, just feeling the expanse and the openness.
Beautiful. So, how did that home come to be? Think back in
Mm,
your memory. You found this home, you purchased it. What needed to happen for that to happen?
mm. My book needed to be written.
There we go.
Yeah,
So you wrote this amazing book. Tell me
yeah.
about your book. How much do people love it?
Oh, it's a bestseller,
It's a
of course.
bestseller, of course it is. Yeah.
Good thing about dreams. Of course, it's the bestseller.
Yeah, yeah.
For years, it's been on the bestseller list.
Yeah, and it's having this huge impact on all these
Yeah,
people, right?
yeah,
Well, how did you get
yeah.
it out there? How did you get people to see it in the first place? How did you help them
Mm.
find it?
Um, Interesting that we go there because I'm kind of in that space now, saying, "How
Perfect,
am I
perfect.
writing my book?" And it's a big question mark right now of how
Yeah.
that's going to look.
And we don't have to define
Yeah,
the specifics.
yeah.
Just I think there's a
Um,
feeling there of you had an
there's
openness, you had an inspiration,
Yes.
you
And the
held the
feeling is that again, I put it out in the world. I
mm,
just started talking about the book that I know I need to write.
yes.
And I'm presently starting to do that because I always knew the book was in me, and I always said one day, and lately it's become apparent that the one day is today.
Beautiful.
And so how I see that journey unfolding is by speaking it into the world and telling people, I'm beginning to write my book,
Mhm.
and being very well connected, and just having wonderful connections who all know different people who all want to help. The support came, the connections came, the networking came, and all the right people showed up in my life saying, yes, this was the book we were waiting for.
Absolutely. Was there a
Yeah.
partner that you had to get this book out there, like a book midwife kind of person? Were you able to kind of do everything yourself, or was there someone else that you needed?
Definitely a book midwife.
Okay.
One thing I've learned along my journey is there are people who love to do the things that I don't love to do, and
Absolutely.
that I can't do, or they can do it so much better than me.
Yeah.
So yes, 100% there is a book midwife, and I love that term.
I don't know if I made that up, but I love
But
it.
it's a great term. So yes, that book
Awesome.
midwife helped me birth it into the world.
Okay.
And yeah,
So
yeah.
just to recap this future story here,
Hmm.
you're going to start to put this idea out into the world. That's going to somehow lead you to this book midwife who's going to really help you birth this book. That book is going to help you make the money that you need and make the connections that you need and create the meaning that you need to get to that
Yes.
next level and have the things that you need to be able, that space that you need to be able to really create the thing that you really want to create and be out there and getting this message directly to people in
Yeah.
person. Does that sound
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there,
I love being in person. I love
yeah.
feeling the energy of a room, and that's something I miss a lot right now. But
Mhm.
yeah, just yeah, feeling everybody else's energy and wisdom and just all that good stuff. I just drink it all up. So yeah, it nourishes me.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. Anything else you want to add to this story or this vision?
Hmm. Hmm.
Anything else that's important that you have in this beautiful space that you've created that you want to tell me how that happened?
I think part of it is the team that I created that helped me get to
Mhm.
where I am, not
Yeah.
being, a one woman show. Um, yeah, and I feel like I already honor them and, and
Yeah.
deeply appreciate them.
Mm.
Um, Again, just knowing that there's, like, yes, I have this information and this story and this set of skills, and there are so many other people who also want to make an impact in the world and are just as excited as me and are bringing their own sets of talents and other good stuff. And so yeah, it's my people.
Yeah. So, what action could you take today
Mm,
toward creating that team?
mm. So I've already started.
Beautiful.
Actually, just last night. So it's so funny that we're talking about this now, but it is about
Synchronicity.
totally. Um, yeah. So one thing that I knew that I wanted to do right now, particularly because I'm speaking so much more publicly, was to redo my website.
Mhm.
And so just last night, I hired somebody who's going to do my branding, going to do my website.
Beautiful.
Because I had done my own, just one of those free ones that you create the templates,
Oh, yeah.
and it
I
was
know it well.
great. Yeah. And then I decided, you know what, it's time for a big girl website.
Yeah.
And that's actually what I
Wonderful.
messaged this person of, like, I'm ready for that. And we had a meeting, and they just seemed so right for me.
Hmm.
And I also have worked with a copywriter who also just gets me. And I've said to her before, because she's done some work on the copy for the website, I said, like, it's like you climbed into my brain and pulled my thoughts out. Like, she was that on point. And so I feel like it's, always being on the lookout. And I think the next step is finding that book midwife.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, that's definitely the next person on my team, because I know these two other ones are gonna, they're stuck with me. They don't know each other, but they are, because I love them already.
Yeah.
And that's something about who I am too, that it's, just as much the skill of what they do and what it looks like, but so much is who they are.
Yeah.
And the connection that we have, and that we are aligned in our values and energetically, and yes, I speak that language. And so it's very much like, I want, because I want them to be part of that team for the long run.
Absolutely.
So yeah, now I'm putting it out there to the universe, your universe and mine. The book midwife, please call me if you hear this.
Well, you know what's funny? I'm a book midwife.
Oh, of course you are. I love this. Hilarious. Oh, this couldn't
So
get any
awesome.
better. And I loved you from the moment I looked up your podcast. I was like, I love this woman.
I'm glowing right now. This is
I am
wonderful.
too. I
This is
can't believe
amazing. This is
so
amazing.
awesome.
All right. Oh, deep breath.
Yeah, okay.
So now everyone listening, you can see the amazing power of allowing yourself to not limit yourself and think, oh, here's what's probable. Okay. But here's what's possible. Here's where I really want to get. And then just working your way back step by step to, well, I'm here right now. What's the next step to get me there. And everyone can do that. And you, I know you're a coach, and so you have a vision board already. You probably listen to your song regularly. You put yourself emotionally in that place. And that is why you're already well on your way. And you're already having these synchronicities happening, like me showing up.
So cool.
Saying, I would love to help you birth your book.
Okay. Woohoo.
This has been amazing.
Yeah. This beyond.
Right?
Totally. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'm loving season 3 so far.
Yeah.
This is great. I know I'm on the right path. You know, those moments where you're just like, yes, I found it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes.
Like,
yes, I totally know.
Here it is. Fantastic.
And this is the freedom, because see how it's so easy.
Mm-hmm.
So easy.
Yeah. Yeah. That wasn't work. That was wonderful.
Yeah. Totally. It's like, wow. Okay.
All right.
Thank the universe.
Well, you and I are going to talk more.
Yes, we are.
But let's tie this off for our audience.
Okay. Yes.
Where can they find you?
Okay, so they can find me on my website, michelleanhangcoaching.com. I'm also all over social media, Michelle Anhang Coaching on Facebook and Instagram and YouTube, and everywhere else, Michelle Anhang. So please look me up, please connect, please friend me. And yeah, I'd love to hear from everybody, anybody. I'd love to know if, you know, my story impacted you. And yes, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for this.
Thank you so much. I'm just like reeling right now.
I know,
I can't believe this. This is so cool.
All right, we'll stop right there.
Okay.